People don't realize how far this goes, and it's a main part of the WEF's agenda, and actually, it's one of the Sustainable Development Goals. If we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the 17 goals that they want to try and hit to create the perfect world for sustainability, if we look at number 5 there, gender equality. Gender equality is actually on the list for Sustainable Development Goals. That's very interesting. Sustainable. They're talking about how the world has too many numbers, if you catch my drift. How do you stop that? How do you pause that? How do you bring those numbers down? Just like the Georgia Guidestones before they were blown up. Part of it was you need to have this many people for a sustainable planet to not hurt the planet. It's starting to make sense now. And then we know with the WEF, they went and did a full-on partnership. They actually removed this page from their WEF website, which is interesting. I managed to grab it using tricks of, I've got tricks. Tricks are for kids, not just for kids. But partnership for global, I'm not even going to try, alphabet equality. Yeah. So at this point, we're getting it should be obvious now, because if they have it a part, this would be different if they were just promoting it and putting it out there, but actually having it a part of their Sustainable Development Goals really puts this into perspective of that's what they're trying to do, because they're trying to hit reducing the numbers from various angles. And I mean, this is just straight out of Satan's playbook. It's straight out of Satan's playbook. So again, that's part of it, but they're also putting it out as a economic advantage. So take a look at this. If you look at the date that this came out, this was June 3rd, 2020. That's pretty early into the stuff that was going on in 2020, in my opinion. But they even put it out there, Great Reset. Why alphabet inclusion is the secret to cities' post-pandemic success. What? Well, if we read a little bit further into it, I mean, okay, it might be difficult to see, even I'm having a hard time seeing it, but there's a little bar at the bottom of the picture that says, research shows alphabet-friendly cities are happier and more innovative, therefore more likely to recover post COVID-19. Then it says economies that are more inclusive are better placed to recover from it. A strong positive correlation exists between alphabet inclusion and economic resilience. In particular, cities that embrace diversity may reap an inclusion dividend as they begin to rebuild their economies. Inclusion dividend, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Talk about that in just a second, actually. But they're passing it off as an economic advantage, and they even passed it off very early into the 2 weeks to control the curve or whatever. Very early into that scenario of, I don't know. I mean, there's obviously another aspect to this that maybe I'm not getting a grasp on. I'm getting the reduce the numbers thing, and I get the satanic stuff, but it's interesting. Now, it mentioned the Great Reset, which, yeah, if you look at this, I know it's hard to see, but I have an arrow pointing to where it's alphabet, a part of their great agenda. This is from the World Economic Forum. And then if you click into that, it actually has an entire separate wheel about all the various aspects to it. So this is very much a part of their Great Reset. This is very much a part of this agenda that they're trying to push forward. Now, so I said on the on that article that they put out where it's economic dividend. Now, if we take a look, I mean, okay, so everybody's heard of the ESG scores, I think, which honestly, at this point, they're starting to get laughed at. They're starting to get pushed to the side. They're starting to, people are starting to kind of wave it away. It's still there. Don't get me wrong, it's still there, but it's kind of becoming obvious at this point. Well, there's another secret aspect that just started kind of getting talked about in the private journalist, the independent journalist sphere, and it's called the CEI, economic dividend, CEI, which is the Corporate Equality Index. And they just put out their 2022 report. This is from the Human Rights Campaign. Now, everybody knows that corporations and companies are controlled and manipulated in certain ways. A lot of people are saying, specifically, like we've seen it with movies, and now we're seeing it with like the Bud Light stuff and Tampax now, because the same dude, the Malarney guy, Dylan Malarney or whatever, who that's where all the heat was going because he's the spokesman for Bud Light now. Well, he's also the spokesman for Tampax now. What a twisted world we're in. But everybody's looking at that going, wow, go woke, go broke. Doesn't really work that way when you're a part of the corporation and you're playing along with the game. So that's how the ESG thing was supposed to be, which it was. But how it was is if you follow along with what the investors want and you have a high enough ESG score, which is like a social credit score for companies, it was a way for investors to keep investing into your company because you're playing along with the game that they want. So that's why these companies don't necessarily worry about income from us, from consumers, from customers, however you want to put it, because they're getting fat paychecks through the ESG stuff. That's why you see companies like Disney, where they're still putting out this alphabet stuff, this all this stuff in the movies, the woke agenda in the movies and everything like that, and everybody's going, man, they're taking a beating on their stocks, they're having to fire a whole bunch of people. Well, the people at the top that are doing it are getting their fat paychecks. That's why they continue to do it. That's why when there's mass boycott against it, they still continue to push the agenda forward because they're still getting paid. It's just not through us. And part of that is the CEI report. Now, if we go to the next page, which is the message from the interim foundation president, there's kind of gives a little explanation on what this thing is. The Human Rights Campaign Foundation, it's about workplace policies, adopting equitable, man, say that 5 times fast, workplace policies, practices, and benefits on Alphabet employees and stuff. It launched in 2002, so it was a long time ago. Employees, consumers, and investors have been using the CEI as a comprehensive tool to determine what a company's policies are before they accept a job, buy a product, or invest their money. Remember that article that talked about economic dividends? Inclusion dividend? Well, it sounds like this is what's going on. So if you play along with the CEI game, you're going to get paid. So this is part of it. Let's just take a look at some of the companies they got listed. Companies with 20 years of scoring 100%. This is 100% according to their index. Apple, JP Morgan, American Airlines, Nike, Xerox, Eastman Kodak, which I'll be honest, I don't even know who that is, and Replacements Ltd. Again, I don't know who that is, but all these guys have hit a score of 100% for 20 years. Anybody surprised by some of those names? I'm not. Remember Nike with the Colin Kaepernick stuff? Oh, by the way, that Dylan Malarney guy who is spokesman for Bud Light and Tampax, yeah, he's now doing it for Nike as well. I don't think anybody should be shocked by that. Let's look at some of another list here that they got on there. 15 of the top 20 Fortune-ranked companies received 100 ratings. Walmart, Amazon, Exxon, which, by the way, Exxon is Rockefeller Oil, the Standard Oil company from way back. That became Exxon, by the way. Apple, CVS, Berkshire, United Health, McKesson, AT&T. These are a lot of companies that have bought out a lot of other companies, and they all have been folded in. Very interesting. Amerisource, Virgin, Google, Ford, Cigna, Costco, Chevron, Cardinal Health, JP Morgan, General Motors, Walgreens, Verizon. You guys surprised by any of those names? These are the companies that you want to know why these companies are getting so big and they're able to start swallowing in all of the innocent other companies and grow their brand out. Well, it's because they're playing along with these CEI, ESG scores and everything where they're allowed to do that. So here's where the economic aspect comes into play. You know how I was sitting there going, wonder what that aspect will be. Well, now we're starting to see it. This is taking down private business. This is making everything into one giant conglomerate where you're going to have just a few companies controlling all of the other companies out there. And we're seeing that now. Like you see it with the broadcast stuff where it's like the same I think it's 8 groups control pretty much all video media, film and TV and all that stuff. Then we know as far as music, there's like 6 companies that control all music distribution, and that's including the CCM markets and the worship market and stuff like that. Well, the same people who control the secular music, they're doing that. That's this aspect of it. And yeah, it has to do with the alphabet agenda. It has to do with playing along with the sustainable development goals. It has to do with implementing these things, even though it may drive away consumers and money, doesn't matter. They're getting their fat paychecks in at the top, and then they're buying up all of the other companies. That's where this is coming into play. And if we just take a look at a couple other things, there's not too much left I want to look at on this, but if we just look at it, businesses see advantages in going public with their commitment to equality, including reputational, there we go, benefits to supporting equality groups and programs, corporate cases for alphabet legal equality. They are on the right side of history. Oh, right there. And eliminate barriers to investment. There we go. Starting to see more of the aspect of how this is involved with the economy. Attracting and retaining next generation of workers and consumers, yada, yada, yada. Alphabet public supports is seen bellwether for broader issues of diversity and inclusion. But that second to last one, the importance of communicating pro-equality messages to millennials. Remember those books? Remember the Spider-Verse movie? Remember all that stuff that's getting marketed to kids and millennials and whatnot? Well, it feeds their economic plan of buying up all the stuff. But again, reduce the numbers, get everybody hooked onto this. And by the way, they've also got it in places like Canada where they just released their new EDI report, which is about Canadian TV and film. It's about the same thing, how much inclusion is done with it. So, but going back to this, going after the millennials, going after the kids and stuff, let's see. Businesses have extensive programs to engage with key markets and communities in which they operate. Public commitment to CEI is measured through a number of individual engagements. Marketing, advertising, and sponsorship efforts. Alphabet-specific recruiting efforts. I can't say that word. Contributions. Alphabet, supplier diversity programs, and public policy weigh-in. Well, all this stuff seems to be aimed at not only, just making your company build around it, but it's about getting more people on your side. And then we look at what also comes out at the WEF, what Dave has taught me about supporting my soup child. This was 2018. They want the kids. Satan wants the kids. This is a multi-prong attack, an agenda that they're trying to accomplish utilizing one very unnatural, evil, and satanic perversion. And it's being used in multiple aspects for their gain, for the gain of the globalists, which will eventually become the Antichrist beast system. And this is the background of what's going on with this. Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about the spiritual side in a second, because, I mean, obviously we can't discuss this without going there. But, I mean, a lot of people, and maybe not you guys who are watching now, but there's a lot of people as I go through and I gather information and everything, I see comments from people and I see videos that people put out about this stuff where people, they're not Christians, but people are so confused why no matter how much people fight against this stuff, it continues to get worse and worse and worse. Because when you've got, and it's a cliche, but if you follow the money, if you've got a big payroll, if you got a big bankroll backing this stuff, it's going to be implemented no matter how much you fight against it, no matter how much you protest against it, no matter how much you boycott against it. It's going to continue to do that. Now, that's just one side. Again, we're going to talk about the spiritual stuff in a second, but that's what happens with this. That's why I don't think you guys are confused by it. I think you guys get it. But when you look at the CEI and you look at the ESG and you look at the agenda from the WEF that dates back to 2015 when this new version of agenda, which became Agenda 2030, came into play because there was Agenda 21 before, this was a part of it. This was a part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And you have to remember, one of the people who wrote this thing up was the Pope. This is part of his project, even though he's going out there every once in a while opposing. He kind of flip-flops back and forth, but every once in a while when he goes out there and opposes it, well, he was the one that wrote this thing. Remember when I keep talking about the game? Don't get fooled by what these people say. People will say a lot of things. Guess what? People lie. Reality check. I know. That's huge, right? Who on earth would lie? That's crazy. Guess what? They all do it. And so don't get wrapped up when these people say things. You need to look at what they are doing. And this is what's going on.